Sgt Stubby, an American Hero, was released in 2018, and I'm really surprised that I hadn't seen this because Helena Bonham Carter narrates it. I'm wondering if maybe it was released but not in the UK at the time, and then I just forgot to check to see if it had come out here yet. I'm making excuses for myself. Either way, I hadn't seen it. I now have seen it, and I'm pleased to say that in general, it's a pretty good film. I don't find it an easy watch because of the subject matter. It's kind of something I'm against, and I'll talk more about that in a second, but that is nothing against the film. That is completely a personal opinion thing, and I will expand on that. As I said, this was released in 2018. It's directed by Richard Lanni, written by Lanni and Mike Stokey, and we have a cast including, of course, Helena Bonham Carter, who narrates it. We also have Logan Lerman and Gérard Depardieu, and this is about Sgt Stubby, who is the most decorated dog of the First World War, at least the most decorated from the American Army. I'm not sure if it's all together. And Sgt Stubby is a real dog, and I'd vaguely heard of him. I don't know if I knew his name, but I was aware of this dog who was the most decorated. And regardless of whether you watch the film or not, I definitely recommend giving it a Google because he is absolutely beautiful. He is so, so gorgeous. And basically the film is about his role and what he did and how he helped the soldiers. And that's technically the bit I'm against because I'm completely against the use of animals in war because they can't consent. And yes, some animals will come out, some animals will survive, many animals were killed. And I just don't think it's right. This is not about the film, this is just me giving some context for my opinion. Dogs were sent out, and then they were blown up, because they were sent out to see if there were any bombs, to see if it was a minefield, and they were blown up and killed, and that's not acceptable. Why is a dog's life less valuable than a human life? Now, I'm not saying they should have sent a human out there to check instead, because I think they are of equal value. I think there maybe could have been a better solution, or maybe people shouldn't have gone to war. Maybe that would have been the best solution. But either way, the idea of dogs having involvement in the war, I don't like. But at the same time, seeing this dog bringing so much value and being courageous in certain situations. So there are some moments that I liked in terms of the dog at war. But as a general concept, not just in the film, but in life, I think it's absolutely a terrible thing because the animals can't consent. They don't know what they're getting in for. And an animal's life is no less valuable than a human's life. I'm very anti-war in general. And the film itself doesn't have the strongest narrative in terms of a key beginning, middle, end. It is there, but it's not the strongest. But I think it's a really good way for some younger viewers, not very young children, but youngish children, preteens, to begin to get an understanding of what the war was like, primarily through the perspective of the dog. A lot of the time we are following it from Sgt Stubby's view, and I think that was a really good decision. I think that worked really well. So the story may not be the meatiest, but at the same time, I think for the target audience of preteen, at least that's my perspective. I don't know exactly what audience they were going for, but it is a PG film. I feel like they showed that it can be quite scary. For example, there's one scene quite early on where all we see are marching legs. All of these legs marching in uniform, and it's quite powerful. It itself is not scary. People marching is technically not a scary concept, but because it's done so strategically and with such power and determination, it does make it seem quite intimidating. So there are little things like that where it doesn't necessarily show just how horrific things can be, but it doesn't sugarcoat it and pretend that it's all a picnic either. So I think they got a balance quite right there for what I think is the target audience. The animation quality is stunning. It is visually absolutely gorgeous. And Sgt Stubby, he looks so beautiful. He is absolutely adorable. And as I said, it's definitely worth Googling and having a look at the pictures if you're a dog person and if you want to see. I read a couple of other things about him, mostly on the Wikipedia article for the dog, which is great. And there are some really interesting things on there. So if you're interested in the concept, but even if you don't want to check out the film, I'd say it's definitely worth giving a read. I really thoroughly enjoyed this in general. As I said, I don't like the concept, but putting that opinion aside, let's pretend that I don't hate the idea of animals going to war. It is otherwise a decent film, not the strongest narrative, but still an interesting experience. I think for younger children, it can be a good way, an engaging way to either introduce the concept of the First World War or at least begin to expand on their current knowledge through the eyes, not completely through the eyes, but primarily from the perspective of the most adorable dog, Sgt Stubby. So all things considered, I can't really complain. The voice acting is good, the animation is gorgeous. It's a decent film. I think definitely more so for younger viewers, but if, like me, you are an older viewer and you love animation, then I think you'll find it to be pretty interesting. I probably wouldn't watch it again, but as a one-time watch, I'd say it was probably worth the 7-year wait. I do feel terrible that I hadn't seen it. I came across it randomly on Letterboxd and I looked at the cast and I saw HBC Helena Bonham Carter's name and thought, hang on, how have I missed this? I have her initials tattooed to my wrist. What am I doing with my life? So definitely prioritized watching that. And yeah, it was worth the wait. I enjoyed it well enough. For younger viewers, I think it could be quite an interesting experience. I was pleased to then learn more about Sgt Stubby, and ultimately, Sgt Stubby, an American Hero, is not a bad film.